First on the list is Cecilia Estolano. She is the Chief Strategist on State and Local Initiatives with Green for All. Also joining us is Len Herring Sr., Rear Admiral, United States Navy, retired, Vice President for Business Services and Administration at the University of San Diego. Len? Lorena Gonzalez joins us. She is the Secretary-Treasurer, CEO of San Diego and Imperial County's Labor Council, AFL-CIO. Dr. Mohit Kaushal is the Executive Vice President of Business Development and Chief Strategy Officer, boy, there's a big title, for West Wireless Health Institute. And also Dr. Mary Walshock, Associate Vice Chancellor for Public Programs, Dean of the University of California, San Diego.
On the whole, I completely agree with a lot of what was said. It's really become an hourglass economy with a service sector who has largely been left behind. If you look at what the economy did in the 1950s, in the 70s, and where we went from growing our economy to stagnating our economy, it was because there were strong unions, basically. Obviously, in organized labor, we know that the best way to create a middle class or to create the upward mobility is through unionization. It allows higher wages. It allows, obviously, the right to bargain for workplace conditions. And so I think that it's really important to focus on that sector as well as a way to look at the future of our economy.
I do want to address something about Robert Reich. Secretary Reich's analysis, we agree with completely at Green for All. We really do think the issue is wages, and what we say is we're trying to build a clean energy or a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty. Our real mission is to build a new middle class, and I know that's what you're all trying to do here in San Diego. So what are some key things we can do in San Diego, which is really well positioned to build a new middle class? We think there are 5 general things to do in any regional economy. One is you absolutely have to invest in infrastructure. And I think Secretary Reich addressed that right off the bat. Foster creativity and innovation. Third, focus on manufacturing. And fourth is to align your workforce development system and your approach with your economic development strategy. And fifth, to Lorena's point, we have to acknowledge the importance of organized labor and community-based organizations in helping us to create a comprehensive strategy which will help address low-income people and people of color, getting them into a pipeline which leads to career pathways for good middle-class jobs.
I'm going to be one of those individuals who are going to be a little bit against the grain and recognizing that somehow in the solution set, the model of yesterday is going to somehow pull us out of the problem that we found ourselves. And I use as an example the third point in which Dr. Reich brought up, and that is the crisis that we found ourselves in when we no longer were able to support the style of living in which we expected. We created an opportunity to increase our debt. And regardless of whether or not we think that somehow those dollars are going to be applied in a fashion that will somehow pull us out of this thing, I think we're losing it. We're missing the mark because there are no metrics that show that that dollar is being spent in the fashion that allowed the TVA, for example, or the WPA to build more than 1,100 miles of highway, 3 major hydro dams, put more than 12.5 million people to work. So I think we really have to go back to the basics and understand that in the fashion of globalization, things have changed. The model's different. Where we are in the expectation of privilege that we've created as an opportunity needs to be re-examined. And I would point in particular to education. In America's universities and institutions of higher learning, American students are now the least, in some cases, prepared to take the technological leap that will keep this nation in the forefront of globalization. 80% of our students within the education system have no interest in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They are the forefront to advancing technological advanced companies. I think we owe more, or more responsibility is due to the education system than just saying somehow that the privilege is equated to affluence or their abilities. And I think that there's a lot of folks who have actually gone down that road to say that our underprivileged students our underprivileged population somehow can't succeed. I'm one of those guys who have been labeled as, the tree hugger of the Navy. And I don't have a problem with that. I've created more renewable energy and anything else in my 12 years as a flag officer, and now continue that effort at USD. But I do believe that that's the future, and I do believe that renewable energies and green resources are additionally a national security issue. Legislation written in the 70s prohibits us from taking the next step. So we need to be able to go back and look at what those efforts are and what models worked in the 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s that will not work in our effort to become more independent of oil and create greener jobs, reuse the opportunities for urbanization that surrounds itself about a sustainable future.
How do we solve the escalation of healthcare costs in the US? How do we really shift the agenda, create a new industry within wireless health, which can help create jobs, economic growth, but also solve the cost problem, which I think is another factor which is going to affect US competitiveness as time goes on. First of all, innovation. We have just released our first prototype of a product, which is a wireless medical device. We will also commercialize products, not directly, given we're a non-profit, but we can spin things out into another entity. We're also going to invest in technologies and entrepreneurs that fulfill our vision. We will conduct validation type trials, again, to show how these solutions can save costs. And then finally, we're going to do a lot of advocacy work in DC, which we already have started, to shift the policy agenda to cost reduction. The US can always reinvent itself. The meritocracy that I see here, I haven't seen anywhere else. The social mobility that I see here is non-existent in Europe. I know 20-year-olds who are starting companies here, and again, that doesn't happen in other places I've been. My bias is on education and growth really being derived from innovation. So look at biotechnology 20 years ago and fast forward now. There are hundreds of companies within this space, thousands of jobs created, and billions of dollars of value created. And my focus now at West is on the wireless health paradigm, and we're at a similar stage as where biotech was 20 years ago. To really perpetuate this new paradigm, I think you need a wireless and telecoms input, which we have here. You need a healthcare IT services input, which you have here. You need a medical device perspective, which you have here. So given the unique ecosystem which is developed here within those industries, plus everything more in terms of the research institutes, the world-class health institutions, the nonprofit piece, I think the opportunity is really great over the next 5-10 years for San Diego to be the global center of healthcare innovation and really shift the argument towards cost reduction as well as improved outcomes.
If, in fact, innovation, entrepreneurship, small businesses, home-based businesses, freelance workers, contract research, contract manufacturing, if these are going to be the industries of the future, how are we in our education and training systems preparing people to work and to be adaptable? But there are three other kinds of workforce development needs that I feel we have as a nation. And one of them is we have a lot of vulnerable industries. Two other areas where I feel education and training, and particularly lifelong learning, which is the business that I'm in, need to be focused, is in supporting the new forms of work that are emerging in this age of globalization and automation. And finally, there's this whole area of being ready for the future. I love your remarks about green jobs. We have to have an education and training system that is getting people ready for the next job, the next technology, the next opportunity. And all work is learning. You never stop learning.